Well, I have proof that the 19th story does exist. Listen.
Chapter 19, Part 1. A Bad Case of the Sillies. Allison started up the stairs 5 minutes before the bell rang for school to start. The stairs were completely empty. Allison liked it that way. When the bell rang, the stairs would be crammed with 1,000 screaming kids scurrying to their rooms, but now it was nice and peaceful. She walked up past the 18th story and towards the 20th story. There was no 19th story in Wayside School. Mrs. Zarvs taught the class on the 19th story. There was no Miss Zarvs. Allison didn't understand it. If there was no 19th story, then wasn't her class really on the 29th? Suddenly she heard footsteps charging up behind her. She turned round to see Ron and Dee Dee racing. She leaned against the wall to get out of their way, but Dee Dee stamped on her foot, and then Ron's elbow jammed her in the stomach. "Ugh," she grunted, as she fell and rolled down 3 steps. Dee Dee and Ron didn't even stop to say they were sorry. Allison slowly stood up. Fortunately, she wasn't hurt, but her windbreaker was torn. She thought Ron and Dee Dee were silly. They race up the stairs, and then when they get to Mrs. Jewell's room, they're too pooped to learn anything. Allison thought all the kids in Mrs. Jewell's class were silly, even Rondi, and Rondi was her best friend. Then there was Jason.
Skip.
Her desk and waited as everyone wandered in. Jason entered the room carrying a glass bowl with a goldfish swimming inside it. "Look what I brought," he said. "What's the name of your goldfish?" asked Mrs. Jewell. "Shark," said Jason. Everyone laughed. Allison rolled her eyes. "It makes him feel important," Jason explained. "Where should I put him?" How about on top of the coat closet?" suggested to the sillies this morning, she said. She took roll. "Who's absent?" she asked. Allison," said Rondi. "Very funny, Rondi," said Allison. "Anybody besides Allison?" asked Mrs. Jewell. "I'm here, Mrs. Jewell," said Allison. She sat behind Eric Fry, so she thought Mrs. Jewell couldn't see her. Eric Fry was the biggest kid in the class. "Just Allison," said Mrs. Jewell. She marked it on her green roll call. "Damien, will you please take the roll call to the office?" Allison stood up. "I'm not absent," she said. Damien took the roll call and walked out the door. "Mrs. Jewell, did you just mark me absent?" asked Allison. Mrs. Jewell didn't answer her. Allison marched to her desk. "Mrs. Jewell, did you mark me absent?" she said again. Mrs. Jewell looked up. "Terence, what are you whispering about?" "Nothing," mumbled Terence. "If you can say it to Jenny, you can say it to me," said Mrs. Jewell. "Get off my case, Butterface," said Terence. "Terence!" exclaimed Mrs. Jewell. "Go write your name on the blackboard under the word discipline." Part 2. A Wonderful Teacher.
Part 2.
Allison was still on the 19th
I'm
story.
just looking at it.
The desks were arranged in clusters of 4. Allison sat at a cluster with a girl named Virginia, a boy named Nick, and a boy named Ray. But Virginia looked old enough to be her mother, and Nick...
Actually, wait. That was a bad spoiler.
Chapter 19, Part 1.
Gotta go back.
A Bad Case of the Sillies. Allison started, causing Allison's tongue to lick his nose. "Yuck!" she exclaimed, and wiped her tongue on her sleeve. Mrs. Jewell began the morning lesson. "Have you gone crazy?" shouted Allison. She ran out of the room and down to the class in the 29th story. "Come quick," she said. "There's something wrong with Mrs. Jewell's class." No one heard her. She slammed the door, then continued down the stairs to the class on the 28th floor. No one saw her there either. Tears streamed down her cheek. "Is the whole school playing a joke on me?" she wondered. "It's not funny." She shouted as loud as she could. She continued down the stairs, screaming anything that came to her head, hoping that someone, somewhere, would notice her. "Fish for sale, fresh fish, fat fish, get your fat, fresh fish." A tall, skinny lady with very short hair stepped out of one of the classrooms. "Shh," she whispered. "This is a school, not a fish market." "You can hear me?" asked Allison. She was so happy she wanted to hug her. "Yes, I can hear you," the woman said sternly. "My whole class can hear you. You're making it impossible for us to get any work done." "I'm sorry," said Allison, But something's wrong in Mrs. Jewell's class. You better come in here, said the teacher. Allison followed the teacher into the classroom. What's your name? The teacher asked her. Allison. Boys and girls, this is Allison, the teacher announced to her students. She'll be joining our class. What? Said Allison. But my name is Miss Zarvs, said the teacher. Welcome to the 19th story.
Exactly.
Chapter 19.
That part 2, we're going to continue that a little bit.
Allison sat at a cluster with a girl named
That is how we know,
a boy named
okay?
Nick,